Hello, everyone. Heidi here from Rain Country. So what I did do is I linked to a video I did several years ago about how to do your own research. That I go more into detail on how to look stuff up and ways to go around it. And that is important to know, especially when you're trying to look things up online. It is a good idea to know how to do that. Sometimes people try to look something up and they're like, how do other people find this stuff? Well, it does take practice and learning how to word things just right. And if that doesn't work, then you try a different types of wording. So I cover a lot of that in that video. So it is a little bit different than what I'm talking about today because it's about how to do your own research, where this is generally talking about learning how to be more self-taught. And especially in this day and age, it's really important that you learn how to do that. And once you learn how to be more self-taught, then you don't have to be dependent on paying somebody else to teach you. Again, this is why I don't like having to charge for what I do. I don't want memberships and all my stuff behind paywalls, because I just put to practice my ability of being self-taught, because I've always been that kind of person. Not that I've never taken classes. Obviously I took martial arts classes, and not saying classes in certain things aren't important. And obviously I took dance classes and then I taught classes. However, when it came to just learning about herbs, learning how to make my own extracts and medicinal tinctures, and learning about the what individual herbs are good for what. Obviously, this is stuff I looked up. Learning how to make mead for the first time. I found a blog that it was easy, it was simple. I followed that. And then I take what I've learned, I tailor it to suit me, and then I turn around and share that information with others. I got that information for free because people were willing to put that information out there. Now, they probably got some kind of monetary, supplement through clicks, just like I do when people watch my videos. It might be getting smaller by the day, the amount I earn, but at least it's something, right? For the time that I pour into this. But then I can turn around and teach others. First off, you got to understand, you got to believe that you are able to do this yourself. It's just like homeschooling your children. We always, no matter how educated any parent is, when it comes to thinking about homeschooling their child, they always, always, always feel inadequate. I've heard of parents who have teaching degrees that still feel inadequate to teach their own children. And yet they're not. They're obviously not. But even those who don't have a teaching degree, even those who don't have a degree in anything, they do have the ability to teach their own children. I mean, obviously, you've learned something to get you this far. And if you can teach your children how to read, then your children can be self-taught. So if you know how to read, or even at least know how to watch videos, you can be self-taught. Sometimes it's just knowing where to start and then putting into practice what you're learning. Obviously, having books, hard copy books, is incredibly important, because you can't depend on the internet to always be there for you. I mean, there's outages. It could just be internet outages. They happen all the time. When I was with CenturyLink, they happened all the time. There's power outages, and if you lose power, well, you don't have that. And maybe it's something important you need to look up. Obviously, hard copy books are important. So in that video I have linked in the description, I go over several different types of books as well. Hard copy books are definitely important, but with ease of access and internet, I hardly ever use my hard copy books when I need information. I am very, very grateful to know they are there when I need them, because I know I can't always depend on the internet to be there. And with certain things constantly being controlled and silenced online, you may not always be able to find the information you're looking for. And with the constant increase of dependence on AI, which just, it bothers me more and more every day to see how saturated in AI we're getting all around us. It just bugs the heck out of me. I see people now constantly using AI to design their thumbnails. It's like, what happened to your own personal creativity? And, I even had somebody recommend to me, and I don't know if this was just about putting out content or about writing a book about using AI. It's like, I know they meant well, but absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm going to be me, and I'm not going to rely on something fake to do my work for me. It's an easy way out. And here's the thing. I've been hearing about how now students in high school and college are using AI to write their papers for them. And there's not really a lot that the teachers and the professors can do other than they would have to take the extra step and say, I need this to be handwritten, or taking tests right in front of the instructor, handwritten, everything handwritten. So with that being said, you got people graduating from high school, graduating from college, who really know nothing. People are becoming more and more stupid because now they're not only, first of all, we were dependent on this, that, and the other thing. So we were kind of losing our creativity. Now with AI, not only are we losing creativity, we're just flat out losing knowledge. And people have no idea how to be self-taught at all, because we've got AI to do everything for us. I think it's rather disgusting in many ways. Now more than ever, people need to learn. It's not that hard to learn how, but if we become progressively dumber and more dumbed down at the ability to teach ourselves, to be able to read for ourselves, to be able to do things for ourselves, it is going to get progressively harder to just learn how to be self-taught, to have reading comprehension. And these things are important, because if you can read and you have reading comprehension, which is also important, and you understand, language is like, that's the other thing. If you look back over the years, this is why people think the King James Bible is so hard to understand, because, 400 years ago, that language that was actually written to where children could understand it. But now as adults, why is it adults have a hard time understanding a lot of the language in the King James? Because our language, our English, has become so dumbed down. We've had so many, I cannot remember. I saw something the other day, and it didn't totally surprise me, of the difference of how many words were in our common English language to how much is in there now. There's like a fraction of the words. We only use a fraction of the words that were once used. We're losing so much as it is. We need to try to hang on to that. I think we need to make it at least a weekly thing where we try to learn something new, whether it be a new word that we can add to our vocabulary, or a new skill, or just a fraction of a new skill. Like, let's say this whole thing with the fermentation starter bread. I've been working on it for years, and then I set it aside for a while. It's like, okay, that turned out all right. I'll go back to my dry yeast making. Then I'll come back and I'll tackle it again. And right now I'm so into it. I'm really, really enjoying it more now than ever. But each time I do it, I'm learning something a little bit different, a little bit new. And it's given me more experience, and I'm becoming better at what I'm doing. So this last loaf of bread I made with the raisin fermentation starter turned out, I would say, as good as my regular dry yeast bread. In the rise, the texture, it's great. I love it. And so, but it doesn't mean I'm just going to stop and keep always doing it that way. I want to keep trying new things, different types of fermentation starters made with different types of things. Like the honeysuckle fermentation starter, that one turned out really good as well. I think we need to keep our brains sharp. We need to be able to always try to challenge ourselves in something, just something. It's like me really trying to break the habit that many, many people have, because now it stands out to me. I hear it all the time. And that's using these ones or those ones. Those are these. You don't have to add ones to it. And I do it all the time, but I'm really trying to break myself of that. So a lot of times our bad grammar isn't because we weren't necessarily taught correctly, but it's because it became a habit. We pick up bad grammar, bad habits, sometimes from our own teachers, our friends, our family, our parents. It happens. And this is why I another reason why I get really irritated that people want to play grammar Nazi. And almost every person who's a grammar Nazi, I've seen them either in text or heard them say something with bad grammar, something that I knew was bad grammar. We all have our little things, right? And it all just comes from what we hear on a regular basis. I'm not trying to belittle anyone for that. The point is that we can all find something that we can challenge ourselves at being better at. And that's going to help that's going to help increase our knowledge and increase our ability to be able to grasp new concepts and ideas. As far as having things to learn from, obviously we have the books, we have the internet, whether it be reading blogs, reading research papers, and watching videos. And of course, with that, you always have to vet everything, especially things that are online. Well, even things that are in books. It's always a good idea to have more than just one source. You can never trust just one source, because whoever wrote that or made that video very likely has something wrong. Then you're going to now have wrong or bad advice or bad information that you're now going to pass on to others. So, and guilty right here, guilty of doing that. So this is why it's important to cross-reference everything, no matter what source. I don't care what source it's coming from. That's another part of being self-taught. Okay. And then obviously the next couple of things are the doing, the getting the experience. So I was talking about this the other day. You got to have the experience, because you might read 5 books on one topic, 5 whole books on one thing. How much of that's going to stick in your brain? If you don't have the experience and start working with this stuff, there's going to be something you miss. There's going to be something you forget all the time. I mean, I don't know how many times I compile information together to put a video out like, this herb is good for blah, 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 blah. But I might only remember blah, but not the rest of it. But then once I start using that herb for these other things, then, oh, I remember now. And sometimes if it's something I already have a video on, it's like, I got to go watch my doggone video because I forgot. And then double check that information again against more other places, especially if it's an older video, when I was first starting to do that. So I mentioned experiment, but as you're experimenting, you learn how to be creative, because all the things in all those books might still not teach you something that you will learn simply by doing. This whole thing with using the fermentation starter to make bread, this isn't something I read about or learned anywhere. I just decided to try. So I'm basically learning something new because I'm trying something different. And as the more I work with it, the better I get at it. Through my years of being a dance instructor, especially when working with the young ones, the 3 and 4-year-olds, I came to understand that the younger the child is, if you can start teaching them to be creative, give them the opportunity to be creative and to think outside the box, they're going to be far better set for education in general, and then being able to learn for themselves. Far better. So what I started incorporating into my 3 and 4-year-old class, instead of just teaching them these basics like This is how you point your toe. This is first position. This is second position. This is third. This is fourth. This is fifth position. And, with your feet, you have 5 different basic positions in ballet, or teaching them how to lift their leg or do a certain kind of jump, or a cat leap, which is a pas de chat, and all this kind of stuff, right? And all the basics that go with ballet, and then in dance in general. I decided, okay, now you've got some of these basics. You know how to do a turn. You know how to do this little cat jump. Now, what I want you to do, I usually do this at the end of class. I just put on some music and one at a time, have them go diagonally, because that's the longest distance, going diagonally across the room. Make something up. Combine all the steps you've learned with whatever you want and make your own dance. Make up your own little routine going across the room, moving across the room. And usually, if you try to do that with the older students, they would just be like, what? Younger ones are more likely to be able to, okay. And they just go with it. They go with it. They learn how to think outside the box. And the more they do it, the better they would get at combining things together. So I might give them my idea, like try something like this, like do a cat jump and then do a little turn and then do a grand jeté, or a puddle jump, as I called it for the little ones, to help give them a visual. They pretend like they were jumping over big puddles, so I'd call them puddle jumps instead of a grand jeté. It was a very, very fun way to get them to see that they have their own creativity they can tap into. And when you see their face brighten up when they realize they can do this and they don't have to be afraid to try, it was so amazing. But even as adults, we can do that. It's just a lot easier if you can tap into that when you're younger. There's something about once they go to public school, they hit that age and they start going to public school, all that gets, this is what I learned. It's like when a kid hits about 5 or 6 years old, they start to lose that ability to tap into the creativity. And I don't think it's because of the age. I think it's because that's the age they typically start going to public school. And now they're being taught to only think inside of a box. Having your foundation, of course. Learn your basics. These are important, just like learning, your weights and measures. Just like being maybe really particular, following a recipe all the way where everything's perfect. You're leveling everything off. But then from there, once you have that, you've got the basics. You know how to make this bread, this cake, these cookies, whatever it is. Now you can be creative and branch out from there. And this is important. And the more you can do that, the easier it'll all get. So when we're talking about being self-taught, I'm going to finish this thought out. It's not even just about cooking. It's not just about learning about herbs or how to heal yourself. Obviously, these things are important, but that goes for anything. Whether it be you're trying to figure out how to take care of your own vehicle, change the oil, change the filters, maybe do some minor repairs. I'm just like Patrick. Everything he does, he's pretty much self-taught, and he comes up with his own ideas. And then if he ever has a time where he feels like he can't fix something, like he's tried and it's not working, he gets really down on himself, but he shouldn't, because he's fixed so many other things. Yeah, you got to accept the fact there's going to be failures along the way. The failures are part of the learning process. It's just like when you're in school and you got a couple of red marks, check marks on your thing that, were wrong. Well, what'd you do? You had to relearn that. Of course, I don't know what they do in school nowadays, but like my kids, when they got something wrong in their math assignment, they checked their own work. That once they got to a certain age, I allowed them to check their own work. If they got it wrong, they had to rework that problem until their answer, they were able to come up with the same answer that was in the book. It's like, okay, I figured out my mistake. So they might have had a failure in their initial answer, but their success was in the fact of constantly reworking that problem until they realized what they were doing wrong and they came out with the right answer. Failure is a learning opportunity. Exactly. In today's school of tolerance, there are no wrong answers, right? So again, that comes back to my point, just like with the AI just invading everything these days, with the way school is going, and this is in universities and in elementary school, there's no wrong answers. You can just do whatever you want and you can still pass. And so now what we have is a bunch of, we used to say, educated idiots, people had no common sense, but now they're not even educated. So it's kind of scary. So we got to take education of ourselves, of our children, of our grandchildren into our own hands and make sure they're getting, ourselves and our loved ones are getting the education that they need to be able to not only survive, but to thrive.